Welcome back to the Book in Minutes.
Okay, let's dive in. We're looking at some really fascinating source material today, and it puts forward this pretty provocative idea. What if getting ahead, financially, isn't purely about being the smartest? What if it's more about being, well, the boldest?
Yeah, that's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The sources we're digging into, they definitely push back against a lot of that traditional money advice. Ideas about risk, wealth, even how we learn this stuff.
Right. So our mission here in this deep dive is to unpack that. We want to pull out the key insights, the surprising stories, and the mental shifts this material suggests. And it's all aimed at helping you, our listener, maybe see some new angles for creating financial options in your own life.
And it feels incredibly relevant right now because how wealth is made has changed so much.
Yeah.
From land centuries ago
Yeah, then factories.
to factories in the industrial age, and now it's information. Fast-moving ideas. Understanding that shift is kind of crucial for seeing why maybe some old rules just don't fit anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's jump into that contrast. Smart versus bold. The sources start with a couple of really powerful anecdotes. First, there's Alexander Graham Bell. I mean, think about it. He's got this game-changing invention, the telephone, needs money, needs scale.
Standard problem for an inventor.
Right. So he goes to the biggest player around then, Western Union, offers them everything, the patent, his company, for $100,000.
Wow, $100. And Western Union, they were the established giant, the picture of, conventional business thinking.
And they looked at this weird device, and basically laughed him out of the room, turned him down flat.
Big mistake. Huge.
Monumental. Because Bell, he didn't just quit. He went out, found other backers, built it himself, and created AT&T, an industry that just completely overshadowed Western Union eventually.
Okay, so that's boldness winning out over conventional smarts. What's the contrast?
The source pairs that with a story from a company downsizing. There's this 45-year-old manager, just bought a house, totally terrified. He's literally outside the plant with his wife and kids, begging the guards, pleading, just let me talk to the owners. I need my job back. He's terrified of losing that house.
Oof. That's a painful image. A real stark difference.
It really is. And the source asks you, what's the core difference here? They argue it's often not about technical skill or school smarts.
It's the internal stuff.
Yeah. Lack of self-confidence, overwhelming fear, self-doubt. That's what holds people back financially, they argue.
So the real world needs more than just, good grades.
Exactly. The source uses words like guts, chutzpah, audacity, tenacity.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliance, yes, but not just academic brilliance.
Real world smarts and courage.
Right. The author even reflects on their own experience, saying they knew both sides, the daring pilot, but also the person capable of begging when fear took over.
And that connects directly to what they call financial genius. It's not just technical know-how.
No, it needs that technical knowledge, but it has to be paired with courage. Fear, they say, it just smothers your genius, shuts it down.
So the choice isn't just asset allocation or something. It's more fundamental.
It's often. Do you play it safe, stick with what feels comfortable, or do you learn to take calculated risks? Do you learn to be bold, let that financial intelligence actually work?
Turn fear into action, maybe?
Something like that. Convert it into personal power, which loops right back to you, the listener. Why put in the effort to build your financial IQ?
According to the source, it's simple. More options.
Exactly. In a world changing this fast, having that intelligence means you can maybe even welcome change, see the opportunity in it instead of just dreading it.
Instead of worrying about what you might lose.
Yeah. And speaking of clinging to old ideas about money, the sources say that's a huge liability today.
The shrunk pants analogy.
You got it. You complain your pants shrunk, but maybe, just maybe.
Maybe your waistline expanded a bit, yeah. Sometimes the problem isn't external, it's our own thinking that's outdated.
Exactly. And why are these old ideas such liabilities?
Because they blind you. They stop you seeing the opportunities right in front of you, especially now. Wealth isn't just tied up in land or factories anymore.
It's in information, ideas, leverage, things that move fast.
Right. And if your mental map for making money is still stuck on go to school, get a job, work hard, save, you're probably going to miss the boat in the information age.
The source gives this really interesting example using a game they developed, the Cash Flow game.
Designed to teach financial basics, right? Income statements, balance sheets.
Yeah, cash flow, getting out of the rat race, that cycle of just working to pay bills.
Okay, so what happened in the game?
They describe this one woman playing. She draws a doodad card. In the game, that's like buying a boat, something that costs you money each month.
Consumes cash flow instead of generating it.
Exactly. At first, she's happy. She likes the boat. But then her friend helps her look at the numbers on her game sheet, and she gets really frustrated. Didn't like looking at numbers.
Oh.
And the game's feedback was instant. That doodad was just killing her cash flow. She was struggling. Later, she gets hit with a downsizing card, then a baby expense. It got worse.
So the game was simulating real financial pressures.
Totally. And after the game, she was genuinely upset. Said she came to learn about investing, not play some silly game. Defensive reaction.
Very. But her friend gently suggested maybe look inward, see if the game is reflecting anything about, real life.
And how did that go over?
Badly at first. She got furious, demanded her money back, saying it was ridiculous to think a game could reflect her.
Wow. But what's the point the source is making with that story?
It's about how games or simulations can be powerful learning tools. They give you instant feedback. No lecture, just here's what happened based on your choices. The game showed her behavior. Buying liabilities, doodads instead of assets, and resisting the numbers. Her friend later said she did calm down and admitted the game was reflecting her life.
And the resistance came from embarrassment. Yeah, embarrassment about not understanding finance, thinking it was someone else's job.
It really forces you to ask, doesn't it? What feedback is the real world giving you? Are you tuning in?
Or are you resisting looking at your own situation because maybe it feels, uncomfortable or challenging? The source says that feedback is always there.
We just have to be willing to listen and learn from it, which kind of leads perfectly into this next big idea, this really core concept from the source.
Right. The idea that the rich invent money.
Okay, hold on. Invent money, that sounds kind of abstract. Money feels pretty real when you're paying bills.
It does. We work for it. We see the numbers. We spend it. But the source argues that fundamentally money isn't real like gold or land. It's an agreement.
An agreement?
Yeah. It's what we all agree it represents. And in this information age, value and wealth can be created almost instantly through ideas, deal structure, leverage, agreements, not just physical labor.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see. It's about how value is created.
And they make this key distinction. The poor and middle class, they work for money. The rich, they make money.
So the more you think money only comes from a paycheck, the harder you'll work for it.
Instead of learning how to make it work for you or how to actually create it.
Got it. And they give a concrete example of this inventing, right, from Phoenix.
Yeah, a fantastic one. Early 90s, terrible economy there, real estate market crash, properties were dirt cheap.
So perfect time to buy if you had cash.
Well, yes, but the source says focusing only on saving cash can actually blind you. You're focused on hoarding, not on creating or investing. They were looking for deals.
Okay, walk us through that Phoenix deal. How did they invent money there?
All right. So step one, they weren't looking at listings from agents. They were hunting for distress sales, bankruptcy court, courthouse steps, places where houses maybe worth $100 were selling for like $20K.
Wow. $20K for a $100K house? That's a serious discount.
Huge. Now, step two, the invention part. They didn't use their own cash. They borrowed a small amount, $2,000 from a friend, promised to pay it back in 90 days with $200 interest.
Okay, so $2 down payment, basically.
Well, borrowed. Exactly. While the legal stuff was happening to get the title, step three, they started advertising the house. Not for $100, not even $75K. They listed it way below market, say $60,000.
$60 for a house potentially worth $100.
And here's the kicker, the hook. Advertised with no money down.
That would get attention.
The source says the phone blew up, they screened buyers, found a qualified one. Once the house was legally theirs, step four, sell it fast. The buyer paid a processing fee, maybe $2,500 up front. An escrow company handled all the legal stuff.
Okay, so they got their $2,000 back immediately from that fee, paid back the friend plus the $200 interest. What did they actually make?
This is the crucial part. They bought for $20, sold for $60K, that $40,000 difference. It wasn't cash in their pocket, tax-like income. It was created as an asset in the form of a promissory note from the buyer, basically a formal IOU. The buyer legally promised to pay them the remaining $60,000 over time.
So the asset wasn't the house anymore. It was the debt the buyer owed them.
Precisely. And that note became an income-producing asset. If it carried, say, 10% interest, that's $4,000 a year flowing into their asset column.
Okay, I see it now. They created a $40,000 asset, generating income, using very little upfront cash, leveraging the market and the legal structure.
That's the invention. And it wasn't taxed immediately like earned income. The source mentions doing like 6 of these deals in their spare time.
6 deals. So that $40 K asset creation happened multiple times.
Yeah, they ended up with over $190,000 in these promissory notes, assets generating around $19,000 a year in income, often held within a corporation for tax efficiency.
That is inventing money. It's not about the hours worked. It's about the deal structure, the knowledge.
Exactly. Understanding money is an agreement. And they even add, if a buyer defaulted, it often wasn't bad. Since they had almost no cash in the deal, they could take the house back, maybe sell it for more next time, say $70 K, collect another fee, create a new, bigger note. The return on that initial borrowed $2 K becomes almost infinite.
Okay, but I can hear people thinking, like the source predicts, you can't do that where I live, or that sounds illegal, or just, that's impossible.
Yep, and the source anticipates that. They say, look, the math is simple. Legal folks handled the complex paperwork. The exact strategy needs adapting for today's market, sure, but the principle holds. Money is an agreement. Wealth can be created with knowledge and structure, often with low risk if you know how.
But most people don't even explore it because they're stuck in that work hard, save cash, buy retail mindset.
Right, which is why developing certain technical skills is so important, according to the source. They list 4 pillars for this kind of financial intelligence.
Yeah, what are they?
First, accounting. Financial literacy, you got to be able to read the numbers, understand a financial statement.
Makes sense. Can't evaluate a deal if you can't read the numbers.
Second, investing. Understanding how money makes money, the science of it.
Moving beyond just working for money.
Third, understanding markets, supply and demand. Seeing the economic sense behind a deal, spotting those opportunities like the distressed properties.
Knowing why something is a good deal.
And fourth, the law. Knowing the rules of the game. Corporate structures, regulations, especially tax advantages, and how to use the system legally to your benefit.
Looking back at that Phoenix deal, you see all 4 in play, don't you?
Totally. Reading the deal's numbers, accounting, seeing the market opportunity, markets, structuring the note legally, law, and the core activity itself, investing.
And having these skills starts to shift you from being just a passive participant
to potentially something more active. The source talks about 2 main types of investors here.
Right. Type 1, the most common, is the person who buys packaged investments. Calls a broker, buys mutual funds, maybe a standard rental property, like buying a pre-built computer.
Straight off the shelf.
Then there's type 2. This is the investor who creates the investment. They assemble the pieces themselves, like building that computer from components.
And the source really encourages becoming that type 2 investor.
Yeah, that's where they say the really huge wins are found. Though they're careful to add, that's also where you can have significant losses if you don't know what you're doing. It requires skill.
Okay, so what are the core skills needed to be that type 2, that creator investor? The source lists 3 main ones.
Right. Number 1, finding opportunities others miss.
Seeing with your mind what others only see with their eyes.
Exactly that. They tell this story about a friend who bought this old, rundown, kind of spooky-looking house that everyone else avoided.
Looked like a teardown, probably.
So totally.
Yeah.
But this guy, he didn't just look at the house. He checked the legal description, the title. And he found out the property included 4 extra empty lots next to the house. Nobody else had bothered to check. Hidden value. He bought the whole thing cheap, demolished the house, subdivided, and sold the 5 lots individually for 3 times his purchase price. Made $75,000 in about 2 months.
Because he saw the opportunity others missed. Okay, skill number 2.
Raising money. This is huge. Most people think banks are the only option. The source says learning to buy property without banks was a priceless skill. It forces you to learn other ways to find capital.
Like the $2 K borrowed from a friend in the Phoenix deal?
Exactly. Or another example they give, finding a $1.2 million apartment building deal. They didn't have the money, but they knew it was a good deal. They tied it up with a contract, secured the right to buy it. They needed a deposit to hold it, maybe $100 for 90 days. They went out and raised that deposit from other people who trusted their judgment on the deal.
Okay, so they controlled the property without owning it yet? Then what?
Then, within that 90-day window, without ever buying the building themselves, they sold their position, their contract, their right to buy to another investor for a $50,000 profit.
Wow. Made $50 just by finding the deal, structuring the initial control, and finding the end buyer. No bank loan needed for the full amount.
That's the skill of raising capital and structuring deals. And the third skill,
Organizing smart people. recognizing you don't have to be the smartest person in the room about everything.
Right. It's about working with or hiring people smarter than you in specific areas, accountants, lawyers, brokers, choosing those advisors really carefully.
It sounds powerful, but again brings up the question of risk. It feels risky.
And the source addresses that directly. You don't avoid risk entirely, you manage it. Financial intelligence doesn't eliminate risk, but it dramatically improves your odds.
And they believe the biggest thing holding people back isn't the risk itself, but the fear of losing.
Absolutely. That fear paralyzes people. They make the point, how did you learn to walk or ride a bike?
By falling down. A lot.
Exactly. You made mistakes, you learned, you adjusted, you got better. Financial intelligence, they argue, is learned the same way, through action, sometimes through mistakes.
So winners aren't actually afraid of losing.
Or rather, they don't let the fear of losing stop them. They learn from losses. Losers are often so terrified of losing, they never even really play the game. And it's not gambling if you know what you're doing.
That's the idea. If you've done your homework, applied your knowledge, used smart advisors, calculated the odds, it's not a random bet. It's applying intelligence and courage.
So the path they're really advocating is continuous learning, a lifelong investment in your own financial education.
Precisely. Not just a degree, but ongoing learning. The smarter you get financially, the source says, the more opportunities you actually see. You get better at spotting good deals, filtering out bad ones, and managing the inherent risks. It's this mix of technical skill, experience, and, well, wisdom.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the big takeaways from this deep dive.
Yeah. It seems the core message is that real financial progress, it isn't just about conventional smarts or working harder at your job. It's really about developing that specific financial intelligence.
Understanding the numbers, the markets, the law, how investing works.
Right. And crucially, combining that knowledge with boldness, having the courage to act, to step outside the comfort zone.
And learning not just to find opportunities, but maybe even to create them, like in that Phoenix deal.
Yeah.
Seeing potential where others just see problems or risk.
And managing that risk intelligently, not letting fear shut you down.
The opportunities, the source insists they're everywhere. But you really do need to train your mind, shift your perspective to even recognize them.
It's about proactively creating options for yourself. Taking those lemons life throws at you and figuring out, okay, how can I turn this into lemonade? Or maybe something even better.
And the potential to do this, they suggest, it's there for anyone, really. Regardless of where you're starting from now. It's a journey, takes time, takes learning.
Often learning through doing, through those actions, and maybe some mistakes along the way.
So maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with, something from the source to chew on.
Yeah, they pose this challenging question. Which path actually sounds harder in the long run? Path 1, work hard your whole life, pay high taxes on your income, struggle to save a little bit, and then have that taxed again when it grows or you spend it.
Or path 2, take the time, invest the effort to develop your financial intelligence, to learn how to harness your brain's power to find and create opportunities and actively build your asset column.
What are you choosing to invest your most valuable resources, your time, your brain power, your effort into right now? Something to think about.